Give it a second here, and we are going to get going. Here we go. So once again, thank you everybody for joining us this afternoon. My name is Robert Bale. I'm Vice President of Sales here at GENEA. Looking forward to going through this topic with you today. For those of you who are not familiar with GENEA, I'm going to first go through, just give you a little bit of background on us. So we are a technology company based out of Southern California. The way we started our business about 9 years ago, we started with a solution to handle overtime HVAC requests and billings in multi-tenant office buildings. Throughout the last 9 years, we've grown our business dramatically. We've grown from about 9 million square feet of office space today to 250 million square feet of office space all over the country. And we've expanded our product line. So our products have gone from one product for overtime air to a sub-meter billing solution, which we'll talk about today. And then our newest offering is access control. The access control product is actually taking us international. We're now in over 15 countries, serving enterprise customers all over the world. A couple things that make us unique. One is we have a 99% customer retention rate. So that is at the building level for the commercial real estate side, as well as with our enterprise customers. We stay with our customers year over year. And a big reason for that is because of our 24/7 support model. It is GENEA employees on call 24/7, making sure that the end users are happy, that tenants in commercial real estate buildings are happy, that we handle the entire process from implementation through training and ongoing support with a white glove approach. And it's a very, very key to the success of our business, which is a big reason why we have a 75 net promoter score, which puts us in the likes of Apple. So very, very important part of the business. So you can see, companies who we work with. For those of you who need references, feel free to reach out afterwards. We're happy to provide references all over the place. So 3 solutions. So we'll talk a little bit about each one in parts today. So we'll talk about our overtime HVAC solution. So at a very high level, gives your tenants the ability via a smartphone app or through their web portal to request overtime HVAC whenever they need it. We command points in the BMS to turn on, turn off, and then there's all the in-house billing as well as accounting integration. Our sub-meter billing solution gets rid of any messy spreadsheet that you may have used in the past to capture sub-meter billing reads for sub-meters for excessive energy consumption, for utility rooms, server rooms, supplemental AC units, and so forth. Really streamlines that collection process as well as billing process. And then our access control products, a cloud-based access control solution, allowing you to have a portfolio solution for access control, also allows you to go mobile and use a mobile credential to utilize your phone to enter buildings, enter parking decks, and so forth. So three wonderful solutions that we have as a product offering. So when we look at today's agenda, so the first thing that we're going to go over is, what should you be looking at when selecting a technology project? So there's a lot of things to go through when you select your projects. We'll talk about how do you evaluate and pick a vendor, what to look for specifically in a solution, go through a couple different case studies for each solution, and then of course, the Q&A. So with me today are our in-house experts. So I'll do just a brief intro to each of them. So first up will be Brian Haine, who's our Director of Technical Services. Brian, thank you for joining us. Maybe give a little bit of background on you, how long you've been at GENEA, and kind of what your day-to-day life looks like working with us.
Hey, hi everyone. So I've been with GENEA for somewhere in the region of 12 or 13 years, and my day-to-day is dealing with technical issues, connectivity issues, and bringing new buildings online, talking to the EMS vendors and building engineers to make sure we can connect to their building and get them working correctly.
Very cool, very cool. Thank you, Brian. Also with us will be Paul Marcoux. He's our Director of Sub-meter Billing. So Paul, same thing. How long have you been at GENEA? Kind of what's your day-to-day like? What are you involved with at the business?
So I've been at GENEA for about 9 years now. So day to day, typically what we're doing over here is trying to help and maintain metering billbacks, make sure that they're accurate, they're on time, but also help properties understand how to bill back, what's the proper way of doing things, and just working through all those scenarios with everyone.
Cool. Thanks, Paul. And then last but not least, Mr. Mike Maxsenti, who's our Director of Access Control. So Mike, same to you. How long have you been with us? Kind of what are you overall involved with in the business?
Yeah, I've been with GENEA for a year on Friday, so tomorrow, and came over to GENEA through the acquisition of the access control product. So my day-to-day is helping our operations team implement our customers on a global basis, and then also helping the sales team as sort of a sales engineer, making sure that the solutions are designed properly for each individual project, and then working with customers on our security and compliance side.
Awesome. Awesome. Very cool. Well, thank you. Thanks to all three of you. Really appreciate you guys being here today. So I'm going to get the ball rolling and we'll walk through some slides and then we'll hear from each of you guys individually as we get to your parts. So, first let's talk about selecting a technology project. So, one of the things that, our customers, especially on the commercial real estate side, they're looking at all the time is like, I want to do a lot at the building, but how do I prioritize, the different technology projects to implement in a site, right? So I look at this as like, three different buckets, if you will. One, there's general internal operations. So is it time now to make an upgrade to the building automation system? If you have an old train system that's out of date and you're ready to get away to something new, are there major equipment upgrades? Meaning, is it, as you're upgrading your chiller, is it well overdue? You need a new piece of equipment in there. Are you looking at property management software? So there's just internal things that handle your day-to-day operations of working. Then there's tenant-facing things. So tenant-facing items such as work order systems. Are you implementing a work order systems, whether it be building engines or Angus, both GENEA partners, or even work speed? Are you looking to do an access control system that is obviously tenant facing? So whether you're using anything with mobile credentials to get to a touchless environment, or if you're just looking for a standard access control system that uses the old white key cards. Or is this a vanity project? You're doing massive lobby renovations, you're changing out gyms, you're putting touchless kiosks all throughout the building. You have these various buckets where you have to try and figure out, okay, what am I gonna do? And a big part of that comes into like, what do you need right now, your immediate needs, and obviously how much funds do you have, right? It's we don't have a limited amount of capital to apply to these projects, so I have to pick and choose what you want to do. So and the other part is timing, right? Timing is everything. We're coming up on the end of the year here, so budgets are going into effect for the start of 2021, and so you have to figure out, okay, when can I do this? Not only because of capital-wise, but also time. There's also a time commitment when it comes to implementing any new technology in a building. So you look at this as, are we going to do something immediately? Can this be done quickly without a lot of disruption to my internal operations and to my tenants, so I can do it now? Do I have to wait for the budget? Is there a large capital requirement up front where I do have to budget for this, get approval from my asset managers and the ownership so we can start in the new year? Or do you do through parts out through the year? So can I do little pieces here and there throughout the course of the year to figure that out? So really, these are kind of the factors you have to look at when picking a project where you want to bring in new technology. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room. Obviously, I am broadcasting from my house. For those of you looking behind, you see the nice whatever this thing is that my wife had me hang up on the wall that has candles. So I'm still at home. I've been home since March, and so the elephant in the room is like COVID-19. It's impacting our personal and professional lives every single day. So we've got vendors like ourselves here at GENEA, as well as our customers, trying to figure out new ways to deal with this, to use it to work. How do you adjust your product? How do you adjust your daily life? How do you adjust the business to handle all these nuances of what our world looks like? Ultimately, we have to say is that in a changing environment, which every day seems something different, you still need to invest in the buildings. You still need to invest in technologies that you have in your suites that you work on a day-to-day basis with. And how do you select the right product and the partner with this other big thing that's happening in the world? And I wish I had an answer. I don't, because we'd all be a lot better off. But this is something you have to factor in this as well. So being conscientious of that, also understanding work still needs to get done. It's kind of how we're looking at this. But I didn't want to leave this so that nobody's talking about it. It's a very big deal. So, but just something else to factor in as you're looking for your budgets, looking at the different technology. The other thing you have to really look at is how do you pick a technology vendor to partner with? So what's your process like? So, how do you find somebody to work with at a multi-tenant office building? Do you look at buildings where you worked in the past? Do you look at other companies where you worked with and bring your technology with you? Do you rely upon organizations like BOMA or Cornet during your selection process? Are they active in the communities within with your professional lives? So are they sponsors of these events? Do you have webinars like this where it makes sense to bring in that technology provider? The big one is, how do you mitigate risk when you're selecting a vendor? So, that's always a scary thing. You're going to bring in a new technology that's going to change potentially how you work day to day, how your tenants interact with the building, how your employees come into a site. How do you make sure that there's not a lot of risk to this, or you mitigate the risk so that it doesn't negatively impact the business? And with anything, tenant facing, right? This is a thing we talk to property managers about all the time is, how do you get the tenants to buy off on this, or how do you get your employees to buy off on this so they're willing to use this new technology? And how do you envision your vendor partners working with you? These are all things that have to be factored in as you look at bringing in a new technology. The other thing you have to do is navigate a whirlwind of companies. So in the commercial real estate technology space, there's like 4,000 or 5,000 different companies who've come into the space over the last, say, 3 to 5 years. And you have to figure out, okay, who do I trust? Who can I work with? Including companies like us. Like this is a big thing. You got to, does this company have a brand? Have they been around for a while? These are things that I always, recommend that our customers ask. Before you do business with anybody, is take a look at, have they been around? What do the references look like? Have you talked to somebody who's actually used this service in the past? Or are you taking a stab in the dark and trying to use that? Frankly, a lot of these companies on this list next year will not be around. Like that's a very true fact. So you have to kind of, look at this, look at the environment to figure out, okay, who do we trust? Who do we partner with before you bring that company on site to interact with your tenants and your employees? So, not an easy task, but these are all things that you have to factor in. So what do we recommend that you look for in a solution? A couple things here. One is it should be as hardware agnostic as possible. You should have the ability to leverage existing things in your building, whether it be your existing building automation system for anything on that side that touches HVAC equipment, or can you work with your existing meters, or can you work with your existing controllers and readers on the access control side? There should be a lot of integrations. So, everything's in the cloud now. There should be really a lot of API integrations with directory services, with communication tools like Slack or Teams, also even integrations between multiple companies. So when you look at like a company like GENEA, we're partners with Angus as well as Building Engines, the two largest work order providers in the commercial real estate industry. So can these two companies work together to provide data that's important to me as a property manager? There should be very minimal setup fees when it comes, especially on the software side. If it's cloud-based, it should be really easy and really cost-efficient to implement. And then ongoing support. Probably the most important part of the whole thing is the ongoing support. Am I going to be stuck? Question you should ask yourself is, I'm going to be stuck with this technology that nobody's trained me on, I don't know how to use, and other people are expected to use it. No, you want to be able to have a vendor who has ongoing support, onboarding for you and all your users, and they're there to help you when times are tough and you're not exactly sure what to do. You want a trusted partner. So we recommend starting with some easy wins. So a couple things to do is, one, get rid of paper forms. The amount of times that I go on a website for a multi-tenant office building and I see here, download this form for this and that, download this form, fill it out, send it in. Like that should go away, regardless of what the form's for. You shouldn't be filling out forms anymore to add users to the access control system. You shouldn't be filling out any forms to try and make a request for overtime HVAC. Those should all go away. You should also get out of spreadsheet hell. No longer should you have messy spreadsheets where they've been passed down through multiple generations of property managers and building owners for you to try and manage something to build back a customer. Like it is just an inefficient use of time. The spreadsheets, the amount of times that we see terrible spreadsheets is very often, but those should go away. And then you should be really looking at technologies to allow you to go mobile. How many things can you put in the hands of your tenants via mobile app? So these are some easy wins where you can really implement some easy technologies to really make this process better for you in a building. So first, let's start with overtime HVAC. So the problem with overtime HVAC is, like I showed you before, forms and work orders. So, 15 years ago, filling out a form for overtime HVAC request, having an engineer walk down to the BMS, program that request, it was a great use of time and it was the only way to do it. But, the problem with that is people circumvent work order systems. People stop using forms all the time. They just don't want to do it or they get lazy. So they circumvent what your process should be, and they kind of go around the system, and they'll end up, you might have a tenant talk directly to your engineer saying, I need air now. Well, the problem with that is when you have an instance like overtime air, it's a billable event. So you often forget to bill that back, or you don't get the accurate billing. There's also leasing nuances. Like brokers have gotten very creative over the years where they essentially give everything away. So if you have a building where overtime HVAC is a billable event, you may have a tenant that negotiates different rates for different floors, different rates for different times of year, different rates based upon who's in the building at the same time. So there's all these little weird things that happen, and doing a form or a spreadsheet is just not an efficient way to accurately capture those billbacks. And of course, time-sensitive requests. Tenants are demanding, they come into the building now, they need service immediately. So you want to be able to provide that service in a very timely manner to get your tenants what they need. So obviously what we recommend very selfishly, you're on a GENEA demo after all, is utilizing a solution for tenant-facing automation. So you want a solution that gives your tenants the ability to pull up an app to request overtime HVAC whenever they need it. So that's just one part of it. It's I need air, I can pull up my app, I turn on the air, and it commands the points in the BMS, it turns it on. Even more important than that, this software solution needs to be able to, one, integrate with your existing BMS. You don't have to, we don't want to change anything. You don't have to rip out, your Siemens system and put in a Johnson control system. You want to be able to leverage what you already have in place. You want it to be able to handle all the billing nuances. So once again, there should be no more spreadsheets for anything billbacks. It should all be done through the software solution. It should be very easy to use. So training for the tenants and all the users should be really, really simple. And there should be a quick implementation. So this should not take months and months and months. The goal is to do a technology like this that leverages the existing infrastructure in place, meaning your existing BMS, and you can implement quickly in say 30 to 45 days. And just for everybody, edification, we've actually implemented in 8 days. So we can go very, very fast. The other big component of this is there should be support 24/7. So requests for overtime HVAC happen. It's after hours, right? When there is nobody at the building, including the property staff. So if you have a tenant who makes a request and it doesn't turn on, who do they call for help? There should be an 866 number that's manned by a person where they can call for some help or get their password reset. It shouldn't be on the onus of the building teams to manage all that. It should all be done through your vendor provider. And what are the results of this? So when you bring in a new technology, it's easier to use. The tenants benefit from it. It's all automated in the background. You end up some really positive results. So here's a case study of one of our sites down in South Florida. Prior to us implementing the solution, they generated about $102,000 a year in overtime HVAC revenue. After the first year of us being implemented, we saw a $45,000 increase in overtime HVAC revenues. Part of that is when you make things easier to use, people tend to use it more, and you plug what we call revenue leakage. So you're ensuring that everything is being billed for 100% of the time. They also used our tool to save energy. So to be able to go on demand on Saturdays and minor holidays. So instead of just running the building for a half day on Saturday, you shut the building off and you go on demand. So it gives you an opportunity to really save a substantial amount of energy. Now, we do have a different use case these days because of COVID, where people are going more on demand during the normal business days and using that to save energy. So totally different use case, but it is relevant. The last part is process efficiency. So there is value to freeing people up to do other things. So when you're freeing up property managers and engineers that they don't have to stop what they're doing, program the automation system, put in a work order, manage a spreadsheet, you really have a lot of operational efficiencies. And in this instance, added about a little over $18,000 a year. So the way we looked at this, we just said, how many requests of overtime HVAC do we process? We assign 30 minutes per request. So you think of all the manual process that you go through and a $50 an hour labor factor. And the end story here is you've now brought an amenity to the tenants that was easy to install, happened in 30 days. And there's a financial benefit to this as well. We saw an increase in revenue of $45,000. We saved them about $27,000 in energy cost. And by making people more efficient, we also positively impacted them to the matter of just about $19,000. So when you subtract out our fees for the year with this new amenity, you've added an additional $65,000 in value to the building. So every building is a little bit different. One of the things that we get asked all the time is, what is going to happen in my building? The honest answer is, I have no idea. We do know that these three factors overall contribute to the value of a solution like this. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and just bring in Brian. our subject matter expert on everything overtime HVAC related, and just give some basic questions about it. So so Brian, how do we connect to BMS? That's like number one question we get asked anytime we do presentations. How do you connect to the actual automation system, and can we work with anything, or what are some requirements that we need to work with that?
Hey Rob, yeah, and this is fairly simple. It's totally dependent, of course, on the BMS system. But if it's one of the BACnet flavor systems, or LonWorks or Modbus, one of the Cat5 network-based systems, we deploy a device out to site that sits on that network, and it can talk across the network to the different controllers. So it's pretty seamless. The serial-based systems, such as the older Siemens panels, we have solutions for those where we send out a cable that plugs into the Siemens system. Same thing with the older Andover systems. So pretty much any of the systems out there, even the proprietary ones, we can do some sort of interface to. And if we don't have a built interface, we have a knowledge base where we can tell you, hey, you need to get this piece of hardware, and this piece of hardware will do the conversion to allow us to talk to it.
Got it. That makes sense. Thank you. Another one that we hear quite a bit is, the building hasn't been upgraded to DDC controls. It's still pneumatic. Can we still connect to it, and can we provide value?
Sure. So there's many buildings that haven't gone full DDC yet. It is quite expensive. So as long as there is some form of energy management system, whether it just be controlling floor by floor, even if it's the entire building, we can still bring some value, because as you said earlier, we go on demand. If that means we turn the whole building off for a period of time and turn the whole building on just for one tenant, that's still an energy saving. So yes, depending on how much BMS control there is, we can bring more and more value to the building. So yeah, still not a problem. Okay.
All right, good. Another big one that we get, also especially when you look at, cities like New York, Chicago, downtown LA is, are we going to turn on the chiller? And how do we make sure we, meet enough load? How do we make sure we don't blow things up?
Well, you know what? I should have stopped you right at, are you going to turn on the chiller? We don't. We do not turn pieces of equipment on directly. We certainly don't turn chillers on. What we do is we turn on a point that enables the system to start. So we don't bypass any safeties. We don't directly command any piece of equipment. We still rely on a lot of the EMS programming to turn that equipment on. But to your point, minimum load. If you need to have a certain number of floors on to allow your chiller to run, then we can command multiple points. So for example, somebody comes in on the 10th floor and this building has three floor minimum load. We will add the point for the 10th floor, plus the point for maybe the first floor and the top floor, whatever it may be. So we can command multiple floors, multiple points, multiple different configurations to ensure that there is enough load to allow the chiller to run.
Got it. Okay. And then, what about from an IT perspective? How do we get our device safely connected to the building? Obviously, it's connected to the internet. So how do we keep it safe, and so we don't have a situation like what happened to Target a few years back?
Yeah, top of everyone's mind right now. Yes, we do have a device that's on the network and is on the internet. As part of that, we require that we be on a private network behind an existing firewall, so that we can't be hacked directly. If our box gets hacked, then somebody has already gone through several other firewalls and security things to get to our box. And our device is connected to our data center by a very secure VPN. So again, somebody would have to hack multiple levels of security to get into our system. I'll never say it won't happen, can't happen, but we do everything we possibly can to avoid anything like that happening. and there is very limited access to our device by anything other than our data center. It is literally our support team. They're the only other people that can physically get into our device.
Got it. Got it. Okay. And then last question. How long does it take us to implement from the system? And what kind of work do we need to expect from the controls contractor, if any?
So as you said, I believe our shortlist is actually 7 days. Dependent on the building and the EMS vendor, we can go incredibly quickly, literally as long as it takes me to ship a device to you. But typically, yeah, 30 days is about normal. And the work from the controls contractor depends on the system and the relationship with the system. I normally expect a day or 2 absolute maximum for a large complex system. For a smaller, simpler building, and when I say smaller, that's probably below 10 floors, you're probably looking at less than a day. So very minimal time and expense, and quite often you can ask your EMS vendor, hey, can we do this on a day where you're coming in to do planned maintenance, that sort of thing. So minimal expense from a controls vendor point of view.
Awesome, awesome. Well, Brian, thank you so much for that. That's really helpful. Once again, for anybody who has more questions about how we physically connect to the building, anything that we do for overtime HVAC, Brian's email address and contact information will be made available to you. But he is our in-house expert when it comes to this. So thanks again, Brian. So moving on, when we look at some other issues, we talked about getting out of spreadsheet hell, right? So that brings up submeter billing. So some things that we see all the time is actually what you see here on the screen. So we see a collection sheet where numbers are scribbled out. You have no idea what you should be reading and writing, what you should be billing back for. There's also a lot of mixed environments where you have old dial meters, which the transfer of knowledge on how to read these meters does not always go well. You have often people who write down the wrong numbers. You have incorrect multipliers, incorrect rollover numbers, and there's never an audit trail. And this is rampant across the country. And these are things that we see all the time when you have very manual processes and you have a lot of people touching something that can result in a lot of errors. And submeter billbacks is a very, very big part of this that we see in the industry. So, what's the solution? It should really be more automated and automated collection process. So if you can utilize technology to streamline the way that, one, you collect meter reads, it protects you from having a lot of people touch things and a lot of people write things down. It also allows you to have an audit trail. So if you look at the GENEA metering app, for instance, the way it works is we send out asset tag stickers with QR codes, like you see here in the image. It goes right on top of that meter, and it works for any type of meter. So whether it be a Demon, Leviton, Dent meter, doesn't matter to us. And then that app can be used to handle the collection. So you take the app, hit the scan button, it scans the asset tag, and then just pops in the meter. All you have to do there is type in the meter value. And from there, that data is stored and a picture is taken of that meter at the time of collection. So what that becomes, it becomes your audit trail. So if a tenant ever questions their bill, you actually have photo proof that the read was taken and what the read was. And then everything uploads to the cloud. And from there, we can generate all the invoice statements. So once we work with the building teams, we get the utility bills, we generate the blended rate, and we generate all the invoice statements. So it really streamlines the entire process, gets rid of the spreadsheets, gets rid of some more of the manual parts of this, and you're utilizing a technology to provide a better solution and better audit trail. And some of the things that we've seen in the industry that really make a massive difference. One is we had a customer who was able to avoid a $250,000 lawsuit, and a big reason for that is because of the picture. So they had a tenant who was questioning their bills for years and years and years, but be able to provide photo proof of what the actual reads were and a time-stamped photo made that so that you have a defensible case in defensible data. We've also seen a lot of inaccurate billings when you're doing things manual. So we had a site that had 60 meters. One thing that we had seen year over year is that they were underbilling by $540 a month. And the big reason for that were incorrect multipliers. So what happens oftentimes is, a meter gets changed out. So electrician comes in, puts in a new meter, but that new meter has a new multiplier. Well, the person who changes the meter and doesn't often tell the person who has the spreadsheet that it's a different multiplier, and so they just use a wrong multiplier, which results in inaccurate billing. So we see that all the time. It's part of what we clean up in our QA process before every customer that comes into to GENEA. We take their existing spreadsheets, their existing data, we do a full audit, we do a full scrub, we clean it all up, and then go forward basis. We have accurate billings with correct multipliers, and we ensure that that tenants are being underbilled or overbilled, which is even worse. So that's really part of the whole process, is to have a technology that streamlines everything, but also makes it very accurate. So with that said, I'm going to bring in Paul Marcoux. He's our Director of SUBMETER Billing. And Paul, we'll just go through a few questions here, get some of your experience and chat about it. So what are the most common billing errors that you see, and how do we correct them?
Yeah, so like Rob said, when we have a new customer coming on, what we like to do is do a full audit. So as you can imagine, we've seen every spectrum of spreadsheet, PDFs, manually written sheets. And so what we do is we really try and break those down. So within the spreadsheets is double checking to make sure that the formulas are working. So is it a consumption times a rate? Double checking all the multipliers. So once we get pictures of those meters, we can actually look at the meters themselves and double check multipliers. We also check rates. So is the rate correct for that market? So rates are typically going to change month over month. So is that math working? And then once it's in our system, is we rerun that to make sure that it makes sense.
Got it. That makes sense. Thank you. If when we come across a site that has both networked and non-networked meters, how do we handle those? And how do we connect to the metering network? I know that's a little bit of a Brian question, but how do we deal with that?
Yeah, so this is something that Brian is very familiar with as well. So Brian's our in-house metering nerd, like he likes to call himself. Is the same box that we use for overtime HVAC, we can actually send out to the building. So that box is going to get plugged into the building management system. And from there, we can actually see the points of each meter. So each meter is going to be sending us data automatically up to, we can do 15 minutes on the hour or every day, that we're collecting the meter reads straight off of the system. So it doesn't need to be read manually.
Got it. That makes sense. So what is our Q&A process like, our QA process? So, ensure that everything is accurate before a tenant sees a statement.
Yeah, so like we had said, we break down a billing spreadsheet. So we like to see what had been billed in the past to make sure we agree with the way it's billed, as well as build that out into our system. So once it's into our system, completely out of a spreadsheet, we're going to get the reads, we're going to get consumption amounts, and we're also going to input that the rate for it. And so we'll create a billing spreadsheet or a billing PDF of the invoices and look at it side by side with what had been billed historically. Does it make sense? Do the trends work? Is the billed amount within a reasonable amount that we would feel comfortable sending that to our customers to send out to the tenants?
Got it. Okay. And then, what about, really more network meters where we need to handle peak and off peak and demand charges? How do we handle that? How do we bill for it? And then, what's our QA process like there as well?
Yeah, so the way this works is once you're connected using our box, it's just another point on the system. So instead of reading a consumption point of a meter, we're going to read a demand point. And so our system's collecting those every 15 minutes. So every 15 minutes, it's going to read the demand of that meter. And once we have that information at the end of the month, we apply the correct rate to it, and it's billed the same way that you would bill any normal straight consumption meter.
Got it. Okay. What about dial meters like you saw in the first page of this? How do we deal with those when people type in the incorrect number, even though they're using the app? Like, how do we fix that?
Yeah. So these are the most fun meters. So what typically would happen in the past is you'll have a written spreadsheet or whatever you're using to collect meter reads. That'll be handed over to accounting, and whatever that number is, you plug it into a spreadsheet. Whether or not it makes sense or not, you plug it in, it gives you a value. Now what we can do is, if that value doesn't make sense, or if it's outside of a reasonable amount, we can go and take a look at the picture of that meter, and we'll actually be able to correct that on our own from our system itself. We can edit it, we can change it, and then we'll be able to provide an accurate billing.
Got it. I do have a question, Paul, from James Snyder. Is how's the blended rate calculated? And then how do we have to handle third-party electric suppliers and solar?
Yeah, so the process of us, once we roll out and go live, is we're going to ask our customers to send us their utility bills each month. So within the utility bills, that's going to be what the base rate is, based on market. So markets obviously differ a little bit on how they're billed. But for this base case is you're just going to take the billed amount on the utility bill, the consumption amount on the utility bill, and divide that to create a blended rate. So that includes all of the energy supply, the taxes, the fees, everything associated with your utility company providing the building with the utility. And we're going to apply that rate straight back onto the meters.
Cool. Thank you. Last one, how long does it take to implement the system? What does a customer need to provide us?
So I accidentally made the mistake of letting our CEO know last week that we were able to get a building online in 20 minutes. So it really depends on the information. So what we do is as soon as we get that new contract, we're going to set up a kickoff call with the team that's involved on the property side. And we have a list of items that we need. So it's usually all the build information, utility bills, everything. So as soon as we get that information, we can get that up and going into the system. I'm not going to say we're going to do it in 20 minutes, but it depends on the information gathered. And then if it's a manual meter read, we typically want to see a picture of that meter so we can do that full audit. So we can double check, make sure multipliers are applied correctly. We understand that the readings are done correctly and make sure that we're set up. So it can be very quick.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, thank you, Paul. Thanks for your assistance. Really appreciate it. Once again, Paul's information will be available as part of the follow-up in the webinar too. All right. So last part, let's talk about access control a little bit. So when you look at, the problem with most legacy systems regarding access control is there's a lot of manual processes for specifically really is for adding and removing users. There's usually a work order that needs to be done. There's a form that needs to be filled out. So to try and just get people in and out of the system is very manual, where that's a kind of a daisy chain approach to get somebody in the system. Oftentimes in most places that we've seen, whether it be tenant spaces or even buildings, there's really not a good process for removing people when they're no longer in an organization. So in a multi-tenant office building, we've seen a situation where there are 4,500 active users in a building, but there's only 1,300 people who work there. And when we asked the assistant property manager, why is that? He said, I only get yelled at if people can't get in the building. Nobody ever tells me if somebody's fired, if they leave. So we just leave them in there for years, which becomes a huge security risk. In addition to that, most legacy systems are really disconnected from everything. You're also, they're not really built to support mobile access. So if you're trying to get to a touchless environment using your phone, you have a system that doesn't support that, that's a challenge in itself. And of course, most access control systems across a portfolio, especially of commercial real estate, they're all different. They've been installed at different times. They have different level of maintenance and different level of just general upkeep, which results in property managers who have multiple sites having 5 different key cards to get in all the buildings. And that's just a very, very convoluted process and not a great overall experience for the users. So what's the solution, right? The solution is to move to a cloud-based access control system. Obviously, we think we have the best solution. Well, we have a cloud-based solution that's built upon non-proprietary hardware. That's a Mercury-based system. What does that do? That allows you to have a minimal cost to implement a new system because it can leverage existing hardware, controllers, and readers that's already in place. By also moving to the cloud, it allows you to do a lot of integrations to really streamline the provisioning and deprovisioning process of adding and removing users from the system. Gives a much better experience because it allows you to natively utilize mobile. So whether it be from database management, adding or removing users, or from remotely locking or unlocking a door, to be able to do that from a phone is very, very convenient. The other big part is you can connect things. So you can easily connect other items that are in the cloud, such as video, visitor management, and there's a direct service and support model to allow you to live chat with somebody who is a service person for this system. So instead of trying to go to a system integrator to try and get help on a software solution, you can go right to the software manufacturer, and we can handle any questions that may come up, and then we can project manage bringing somebody on site if there's something physically wrong with the building. So by moving things to the cloud, it really gives you a lot of different benefits just from our product, but also from a service component, and it also gives you the ability to remotely manage anything, but also to have one uniform system that works across an entire portfolio or an enterprise across the world. So there's no longer 5 different key cards or different ways to manage different system in each building. It's one uniform solution for an entire portfolio. And, so what are the results of this? When you have a better solution, one is you can work with all forms of credentialing. So by having a cloud-based system, you can support existing key cards, you can support fobs, clickers, and of course have the mobile experience. By being a mobile experience, it allows you to actually increase your overall security because your phone, your credential is locked to your phone. So if Paul, for some reason, got my username and password, he wouldn't actually be able to log in and use that to access the building because it's actually locked to my phone. So it's a much more secure process. Most people aren't going to hand their phone to anybody else to allow them to do anything, as opposed to a white key card, which you can buy a device on eBay for 25 bucks that you can copy those. The other unique thing about our solution is you have a self-service tenant portal. So why is that important? So most access control systems that are installed in multi-tenant office were not built for multi-tenant office. They're built for tenants. And what the problem with that is when you look as a property manager, you log into the system, you just see a massive list of users. You don't know which tenants they apply to. You can't run activity ports by your tenant. You need to do it by groups or person. You want to be able to have a tool that separates all the tenant data. You know exactly who's in the system, what the tenant they apply to, and allows you to put in various rules as part of the lease, right? A tenant may only get a certain allotment of parking access. You can't manage that in the system that doesn't track what does on a tenant by tenant basis. And you want to have an analytics dashboard where you can track, all right, who's physically in the building now, like as of right now, real time. What are the busiest doors? What are the busiest times of day? So you know really how to manage the building. You also want to be able to alert if there's a door held open. And I mean alert immediately via a Slack notification or via Teams chat or via email to notify you if there's something physically wrong with the building so you can address that right then. And by having a cloud-based solution and mobile access, it gives you a much better way to manage all that. So when we look at mobile, just to give you a preview of exactly how does mobile work, a couple ways you can use mobile. One is what we call tap to open, where you tap your phone to a reader and unlocks the reader, open the door. Otherwise, we call twist and go, my personal favorite. You twist your phone, it unlocks the reader, allows you to open the door, or you don't have to roll down your window in your car. And the last part is using a mobile application like an Apple Watch. So phone's in your pocket or in your purse, you open up the watch and you can open the door. So 3 different ways, from a tenant experience to actually get into physically to the site. But of course, on the management side, you can remotely lock and unlock doors. You can manage a database, and everything is done remotely. So with that, that's an access control review. But now I'm going to bring in Mike Maxsenti, is our director of access control, and Mike will kind of go through a little Q&A with you as well. So one thing we get asked all the time is, why is a Mercury-based access control system? What is so important about a Mercury-based access control system? Why do our customers care?
Yeah. This is, especially when you're talking about a commercial office building, a really critical question. And the reason I say that is because a commercial office building, these are buildings that are going to last for decades. So you want to make sure that if you're going to invest your capital into an access control system, oftentimes the initial installation can be around $250,000 to $500,000, depending on the size of the building. You don't want to then come to the end of the line 5 years from them and go, well, there's all these new features and technology that we want to implement. how much is it going to cost us for us to upgrade the access control system and then be stuck with a $150,000 upgrade cycle? By being on Mercury, you're opening yourself up to the future of possibilities in access control, and protecting your capital investment at the same time, because there's a network of other software vendors that are building on this open protocol system constantly. So today there's over 36 different software providers that work on Mercury controllers, and that gives you flexibility. Two is, and we see this constantly, where we're upgrading legacy access control systems, whether it's an old Linnell system that's 10, 13 years old. Fortunately, that those boards are Mercury based, and we're able to upgrade those buildings without ripping and replacing all the hardware, which gives you significant capital savings, and allows you to have that flexibility where you're not locked into a single vendor. So being on the Mercury system is a lot like being on BACnet for your BMS system. You wouldn't install a non-BACnet BMS system today. You shouldn't install anything that's not Mercury based as well for access control.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. Thanks, Mike. Can I use, can I use the current readers that I have in place with your access control system, or do I need to upgrade everything?
Yeah. So there's two different scenarios here. One is where you just want to maintain using physical key cards. In that scenario, 99% of the time you can use your existing card readers. Now, if you want to enable a touchless access experience for your tenants, you want to start using mobile credentials. That is where you start to get into a 50-50 scenario. Sometimes you have existing HID readers that can either have a Bluetooth module added onto them, or they already have that Bluetooth module. So in that case, very lightweight, very easy upgrade. However, a lot of buildings that we come across have older systems. So if you have a system that's usually 5+ years old, your existing readers cannot be upgraded to work with mobile credentials. And in that case, you would need to get a new reader put on. Now, thankfully, it's an easy process. So the labor costs are low relatively. And then also the equipment costs aren't too much. Usually looking about $400 a door with parts and labor to upgrade from a legacy reader that's only supporting physical cards to a mobile enabled reader.
Okay, makes sense. Thanks again. One thing is we hear all the time, especially as you go to multi-tenant office, is every tenant has a different card in a different card format for their suite. Can we support them? How does it work? What if they have proprietary cards? Like what, how do we deal with that?
Yeah, so again, this is a critical question for a lot of buildings. One thing that we want to avoid is having to force your tenants into using multiple cards. And this is oftentimes happening with your biggest tenants. If you have a Johnson & Johnson or Chase Bank in your building, right? Those types of companies are going to have their own corporate-wide credential standard. They're using an HID Corporate 1000 or MyFair card, something like that. In that scenario, our multi-class or our Signal line readers support the widest variety of credentials out there. And another quick question that oftentimes comes up is, well, what about Castle cards, or what about X, Y, or Z proprietary card? 90% of the time, those cards are using a proximity-based communication protocol that'll work with our readers. It's just a matter of matching the card formats. So what we've done with Building Sync is made it really easy for tenants to not only get those card formats supported on the base building system, but then they can also submit their cards that they're using at the corporate level to the building's system through Building Sync, so that they can have a single credential experience at your building. And that's a critical piece of the Building Sync functionality that our product brings.
Got it. What if you come across a building, right, and and the corporate policy doesn't allow employees to download an app onto their phone? Can they still use our system? Yeah.
So today, as Rob mentioned in the opening presentation, we work with a lot of corporate and enterprise level companies that have their physical card standard, and they can't use mobile for compliance reasons or for employee identification reasons, right? If you have 5,000 employees, not everybody knows everybody. So you need to have a physical credential that's displayed so that people know that's an employee of our company. And in those cases, yeah, we totally fine. We, in fact, if you look at our customer base today, about 60% of our user base uses a physical card only. So this is a very common scenario. In fact, oftentimes, the value of our product is not necessarily derived from the ability to use your phone to open a door. A lot of the value is derived from automation of your processes, making sure that people are added and removed from your access control system the second that they're hired or fired. And that's a lot of the value, right? It's automation and then also consolidation of your systems onto a single platform. We've come across companies that have 30 plus offices, and each one of them is using a different access control system that's completely disconnected. And in that scenario, what we're doing is we're overlaying on top of all those systems and then consolidating them onto one platform. That's hugely valuable for enterprise security and IT. So that's where a lot of the value that comes from. Mobile credentials are great. They're very secure. It's the only way I'll ever want to use a key card in the future, but it's not necessary.
Got it. Okay. I know we're in 15 different countries. How do we support our customers 24/7? What's our process? Is there something physically wrong on site? How do we get somebody on site to fix that in another country?
Well, we have a partnership with Red Bull, and no, I'm kidding. We have a big team that's working around the clock to support our customers, and doing that in multiple time zones. It was challenging at the beginning when we were just getting started, but now that we're 6 years in, we have a team that's working around the clock to support those customers. And we have great partners in all of those geographies that we support that are doing the on-site work. So when you become a GENEA Access Control customer, whether you're in Sydney, Australia, or London, or downtown Chicago, we have various partners in each of those cities that not only do the implementation with us, but they also are our on-site support staff. So if we do need to send a technician on site, you're going to contact GENEA support, and our team is going to dispatch a technician if we can't resolve it remotely. Now, one of the things that we found by being the only access control software company that offers 24/7 direct support to our end users is that 90% of tickets can be solved remotely without sending someone on site. And that's huge cost savings over the lifetime of a system for a lot of people, because if you're using a legacy access control system that's on-prem, any sort of software issue, you have to have a technician go on site. And oftentimes those billable hours can range anywhere from $100 to $150 an hour. And they're going to charge you for driving out. So you're going to rack up these big service charges on top of waiting days to get the issue resolved. Whereas with us, we can usually just log into your system, fix whatever's wrong, upload the users, change the setting, and get you taken care of in a matter of minutes.
Got it. That makes sense. Last one, how long does it take to implement our system? What do we need from clients to get started?
Yeah, well, access control implementations have a wide range of variables involved in them. I would say on average, it takes us anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks to get a project from signature to completion. But it can vary. It depends a lot on what type of hardware situation we're coming into. If we're just taking over your existing Mercury panels, that can be done in a matter of days, as long as we get all the data exports and replicate everything, and then switch the IP addresses on the controllers. Or if we're doing a brand new installation, if you're building out an office or you're building a whole building, those can take months or years, just depending on your construction schedule. So there's a wide range of time scales, but most of the time when we're retrofitting an existing system, think about 2 to 3 weeks.
Got it. Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you, Mike. Really appreciate that insight. It's very helpful. So just some final thoughts before we go and finish this. Once again, going back to the very beginning is prioritize your technology projects. figure out, timing wise, budget wise, start with some easy wins, figure out what you can do now and make it, very efficient. Pick a vendor partner who's going to be there to support you in the long haul. You like, customers with 24/7 support like Genea. This is part of what we do. But you want to have the implementation process go smooth. You want the ongoing support to kind of be there. Do something that's very practical that's going to make your life and the life of your tenants, better. And sometimes it's very little tweaks here. Sometimes it's easy technologies that you can implement like ours, where it just does make a dramatic improvement in overall people's lives. And then, overall work with your vendors to make sure it's successful. If your vendors are not reporting back to you on how they're doing, maybe they're not doing great. You should be working with them directly to say, okay, this is what you said you're going to deliver. It's what you sold me. This is how you implemented it. How do we know it's successful? So definitely work with your vendors to provide all that information to you. So with that, I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Thank you to Paul, Brian, Mark, Mike. Really appreciate everything you guys are doing, and your expertise is very, very helpful. Once again, this is being recorded. This will be delivered out to everybody as well as part of the follow-up. So thank you, everybody. Really appreciate your time, and have a wonderful day.